Start the clock. 20-minute sprint. For those of you who have not been here before, we keep it on the button 20 minutes. We get in, we get smarter, we get out, we get back to selling. It is pure protein of content meant to deliver actionable stuff that you can take away in 20 minutes, start dropping into your sales today. And I'm excited about this one because I'm an avid prospector. And this topic comes up again and again and again when I'm talking to sales teams. AE self-sourced pipeline. It's something that's coming up constantly, especially now because it's getting pretty chippy out there. So I had to bring in the big guns. Tom Alaimo from TA Sales, 7-figure prospecting boot camp. We're going to go right to the belly of the beast here, right to the oracle of prospecting, understand what those best practices are. Tom, tell the world about yourself. Who are you? How'd you get to TA Sales, 7-figure prospecting?
Yeah, man. Thanks for the invite. Excited to be here. Drop some nuggets. Yeah, I've got about 10 years in sales. I started selling Cutco knives door to door in college. Got into tech sales after school. Was at a few different companies, most notably at Gong for a few years as they've kind of rose through the ranks. Left there at the beginning of this past year to start my own business on sales training. I run a 30-day boot camp that helps SDRs and AEs build massive amounts of pipeline. So this is a really tough thing to learn. It can be painful, but to me, it's what separates the average salesperson from the salesperson that hits quota every single year and gets the President's Club.
Yeah, so essential though, and it's what really separates the best from the rest. And whenever I talk to one of you Gong guys, I feel like I'm talking to the NSA. It's like you guys have all the data, you know, where all the bodies are buried in sales and all the secrets. So this is gonna be fun. Let's get right into it. A lot to cover. First, let's talk about why we're even talking about this. Like, what the fuck, right? Why is this such a challenge for AEs, and why do they keep hitting their heads against the wall trying to develop their own pipeline? Where do you think it comes from?
Well, I think it's a few things. One, like we are in a really challenging market. I don't have to tell you that, but 99% of teams and reps I speak with are saying it's way harder now than it has been in the last 5 or 6 years. And so you're getting less marketing leads, you're getting fewer SDR booked meetings. So you've got to go out and do the work yourself as an AE. And the reason that's hard is because it's work. I compare prospecting to exercise. I think it's a perfect comparison because it's something that we know we need to do. We know it's going to benefit future us, but it sucks in the moment. It's painful. It's hard. It's laborious. But you're paying your future self when you do it. So there's typically a lot of resistance because there's rejection, because it's hard to do, because we don't know what to say in an email or on a cold call. We don't want to get told no. And we've got 17 other things that we need to do. We've got demos as AEs and discovery calls and updating Salesforce and all these internal meetings. So who has the time to prospect, Matt? That's what I hear a lot. And so hopefully we can debunk some of those myths and just get some practical tips that people can use today.
So let's start exercising some of those demons right away. Yeah. Before we start working on best practices and get a little nuggets of what you're working on with TA, where do you think AEs go wrong with this? Where do they get off the rails, and where do things start to really fall apart when you find that they're really struggling with self-sourcing?
So let's start with let's just start at the basis fundamental, which is finding the time to do it, right? And there's 3 steps that I take. We've all got the same 24 hours. We all want to hit quota and ideally do it in as little time as possible, right? So you can spend that extra time selling more and making more money, or spending with your family, or whatever you want to do. So the 3 steps that I take, number 1, you want to prioritize, right? So if I was struggling with time management, I do this about once a quarter. I write down everything I do in a day by 30-minute increments for just even a couple days, not what's on my calendar, but what I actually do. And without judgment, I look at that and I say, how much time, what percentage of my working day did I actually spend on generating pipeline? There's only a few things that help you build pipe. It's research, it's the emails and calls and LinkedIn messages and actually taking the action points there. It's maybe some learning and development, like something like this, or a course or a book, but there's not many things. So how much time did you take, right? So the 80-20 rule. Then we get into the actual activity. So I have a 4-step mode called outbound mode. It goes like this. One, I do all my prep the day before, right? So I know the next day who I'm calling and emailing. I block off time on the calendar. I treat this as my most important meeting of the day. If for some reason my CEO or a key customer or someone's going to impede on that time, okay, that will happen sometimes, although I will try to set boundaries. When else can I, rather than just delete it, what other point can I move it in the day? Ideally, it's at the time where I have the most energy. I'm feeling the best. For me, that's in the morning because like I'm a morning person. I get up and go. So I'm better at doing it at 9 in the morning than I am at 5 in the evening.
So
But
step one
I
starts
want
the
to just
day
get it
before.
done.
Step
Sorry?
one starts with your plan. That starts the day before. You're starting to think about tomorrow, today, to get the foundation set up. That's step one.
Yeah, you want to start with like setting the foundation. So when it's go time, when I'm making calls or I'm sending emails, that's all I'm doing.
Yep.
I'm not also researching. I'm not also on LinkedIn. I'm not also looking up a company's financial records for research, right? All I'm doing so my brain can get in a rhythm. I turn off distractions. My phone's a do not disturb. I tell my boss if I don't have one right now, but if I did have one, I would tell him or her, hey, I'm going to be off for an hour off of Slack. Call me if you need anything urgent. Otherwise, I'm in build mode. And then the last step, which is the most under-recognized, is I reward myself at the end. I've got a golden retriever, Matt, and when I don't want him to pee in the house or bark at a squirrel, I reward his good behavior with a treat, so he wants to continue that good behavior. We're not that much smarter than dogs. That's neuroplasticity in our brains. So after I do a hard thing, I reward myself. I grab a cup of coffee. I'll let myself take a little walk or scroll Instagram for 5 minutes or whatever it is, just a small little dopamine hit. And that actually teaches my brain that the next time I do that hard thing, I know a reward's coming and can make it seem less daunting if you're a little intimidated by prospecting.
Sounds very atomic habit stuff. It sounds like you're stacking, you're putting the process in place, you're delaying reward, but associating reward to the habit. So it starts to reinforce a lot of those best practices.
James Clear's my guy. I love that book. Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so it sounds like it's the underlying process. Let's say, give us a little taste of the TA sales secret sauce, a little window into the 7-figure boot camp that you're running. What are some of the nuts and bolts, the blocking and tackling of actually performing and producing results to drive pipeline and build some of that interest?
Yep. So here's like the 80-20. Here's the high level that hopefully, will help some folks. So first off, I focus on selling to the problem. So when I make a call or I send an email, I'm not droning on and on about my sales training. I'm not droning on and on about how great Gong is and this new thing that we were featured in an article or got listed on the Inc. 5000 or whatever. I'm focusing on the problem. So I have this Google sheet and I can share it with you and we could share it with anyone that breaks down what are the problems that each of my persona that I reach out to have, what's the impact of that problem, and how does my company typically solve that? That is the majority. That's the meat of, if you think of a cold email, that's the middle. So my email looks more like, hey, Matt, VPs of all, sales leaders tell me all day long that their teams are struggling to hit pipeline or that they're slow to, ramp their new SDRs and they're losing time to value. I help with X. Here's how I help that. And then I ask, I have a call to action after that. So the meat, and I treat myself like a scientist that like, I'm only out there looking for people that have the problem. If you don't have the problem and I reach out to you, cool. Your sales team's doing as good as it's ever done. You've got the best training program ever already installed. Cool. Not a good fit. I'm not going to waste my time or your time. I want to move. There's plenty of people right now that need what I can help them with. And my job is to try to find those people. So that's why I lead with the problem. I'm doing emails. I'm doing calls. I'm using LinkedIn. Cold calls are what's working the best right now for the majority of the clients I work with. But I always think that using multiple vehicles is a good way to try to reach folks and do that systematically so that, every day you're spending time, trying to touch them in a different point, in a different way. And go through, the typical kind of like 10, 12 step sequence that is personalized and relevant to the persona that you're speaking to.
So every day, would you recommend that an AE dedicates some time to prospect every day?
I would, yeah. I think I think the goal, like the rule of thumb that I go by is if you can try to build in 60 minutes a day to doing it. And you know, maybe there's some days you're traveling, you're at a conference, you're at Dreamforce right now. Maybe you can only do 15 minutes. And I think, you know, or maybe you could do an hour 3 days this week, and then you get back on the horse. On a normal week, there's a story, if I can tell a quick, I love metaphors. And there was an expedition in 1917 of who would cross the South Pole the fastest. There's 2 expedition teams. Have you heard this before?
I have, but I don't know if everyone else here has. So let's get into the 2 teams and what happened.
So there was 2 teams, right? The first team, the strategy was they were going to go based on what the conditions were. If it was nice out, they're going to march 50 miles. If it was terrible out and there's a blizzard, they were going to stay in their tents all day, and they were going to adapt to the conditions. Team 2 said, no matter what, rain, shine, blizzard, whatever it is, we're marching 20 miles. I'll you know, kind of ruin the ending. Team 2 not only won the expedition, but Team 1 died along the way. And so the reason that I say that is you've got to pick what's your 20-mile march as an AE, as a prospector. So you know your day better than I do. You know what your pipeline looks like, how much help you're getting from marketing or your SDR. But for me, the rule of thumb was 60 minutes a day. And whatever I get on top of that from other people helping me out is just a cherry on top. But 60 a day is how I was going to hit my quota. And that was my strategy.
Love it. And to layer on top of that, my personal experience, I remember while I was leading sales teams, I eventually want to jump in and start to lead by example, start to pick up the phone. I would suck. I would just absolutely suck at it because I was out of practice. I remember once being really, really good and booking tons of meetings, high speed, really, you need to stay in the game. It's a muscle. And if you don't get that regular daily reps in, those regular reps in practice, you're just going to suck at it because you're focused on different things. The skills get dull and you just kind of like forget how to do it. I mean, even when we go on vacation for 2 weeks, come back and it's like, it takes a day just to remember how to do the job, right?
Totally.
So if reps and AEs are not just getting in there and getting some reps in just to stay skill sharp with it, it's going to get dull fast.
Yeah. Just showing up every day is like more than half the battle. We could talk about cool subject lines, cold call openers, LinkedIn sales navigator hacks all day. And I do talk about that stuff, but just showing up and doing like B- like quality for an hour a day is better than the vast majority of other salespeople, and is going to put you in a pretty good spot. And then over time, as you get the quantity up and you take some hints and you know, read a book or take a course or something like that, your B- will get up to a B+ and then to an A. But the harder part, in my opinion, is to get people to actually get that muscle going and then just like keep the consistency going.
Okay. You mentioned that you're drilling into problems and you're only talking to specific types of customers. ICP, I'm guessing, is what you're zeroing in on.
Yeah.
When you're talking to an AE who says, hey man, I got internal meetings, I'm running demos, I'm sending out contracts, I'm getting customers in, I'm joining onboarding, like I got a lot to do. Give me some advice on how to do this research so I'm not just spamming out bullshit to a contact list that's like very generic, has no value, and has a shitty reply rate.
Yeah.
What do you recommend for running research at a high speed that's really quality?
Yeah. So what I have experienced in my own career is that typically I'm reaching out to about 3 different personas for a deal. So at Gong, for example, there's VP of sales, head of RevOps, head of enablement. Those were like the 3 key people. And then maybe like a sales manager. And they all care about different things. And so what I would do is I would go find what problems did each of those 3 people have before they bought your solution. So if you have a call recorder, I would go back and I'd listen to the discovery calls on 10 deals and hear those. If you don't have that, I'd go to G2. If your company's on G2, you could even compile all the G2 things, put it in a chat GPT and tell me what are the top 10 reasons that people, you know, what are the top 10 things people were struggling with. Read some case studies and testimonials if your company has those. If you are the first AE at a company and you have like 1 customer, then go out and there's third-party data that you can find of like what are the top challenges that a VP of sales has or a CIO has in 2023. And that may not be specific to what you sell, but you can hone your pitch to, hey, this Salesforce report came out and said that the top priorities of a CMO are A, B, and C. You know, are you struggling with that? Here's how we help. So I think knowing the problem is as important or more important than, you know, being able to know like all the bells and whistles of your own product. If you can really get to the problem in the heart of that in prospecting and then in your discovery, you're going to be in a really good spot to be able to be seen as like a trusted advisor with that prospect.
Very cool. So we have a little surprise for you, Tom. We pay homage to our guests here on the Triple Session 20-minute sprint by creating a specific course or a specific class dedicated to the subject matter of expertise. And we built one for using AI in prospecting. Sending the link here. It's free. It's open. Anyone can get into it. How to use AI. It's one thing that I hear all the time from AEs, and you mentioned it earlier in this call, that it's just how do you have as much time as you need to? AI is changing the game. We put together some best practices there. Get into it, learn, study, tons of stuff out there. How do you see AI changing the game? Because it seems like there's a new AI tool in the market every day, and it's impacting how we research, it's impacting email, it's impacting demo and multi-threading and everything. Where does this fit in with prospecting for you?
Yeah, I think the future, I think AI is going to be game changing. I think it's hard to deny that. Right now, the first place most people are looking to is, can AI write a better cold email than me? To which I would say, probably not. If you just said, ChatGPT, write me a good cold email, it might get you 50% of the way there, 60%, put some human element on it. I don't think that's the best use of your time. What I would have something like, ChatGPT, or there's other free AI tools like Perplexity is one I just learned about. It's free. I'm not associated with any of them. But to do the research for you. So I'll give a few examples. I told you that G2 one earlier. If you are researching big accounts, public companies, you could put a big, 10K or financial document in there, have it summarize the top 3 opinions. I've seen AEs use this to help build a business case with a prospect. So prompting it and saying, ChatGPT, pretend that you are the CRO at Gong, and I'm trying to sell to Gong. What are the key priorities that you have? And then you keep prompting it and say, okay, let's say that you invested in sales training 12 months from now. What were the key results that would have made that a great investment for you, right? And you can kind of coach it to tell you what might be interesting to a prospect. So I would encourage folks to play around with it, use it as more of like a second brain or your assistant or a creative brainstorm partner to help save time or do your research for you than I would on doing the emails for you or running anything specifically. I don't think it's quite there yet, although I do think it might get there, especially with some cool tech that's coming out.
Yeah, I just posted on LinkedIn earlier today a sample of a prompt that I put in for a first outreach email to ChatGPT and what it gave back to me. And it was fucking horrible. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
It was 4 paragraphs long. And it was, hi, Tom, how are you? Thanks for opening my email. I was like, here's the problem with most AI. It's just a cut and paste of the internet. And most shit on the internet sucks. Right? Yeah. When you do sales research, most of it's either antiquated or just flat out awful. I mean, that's why guys like you have jobs like you have running 7-figure boot camps, because this stuff is hard and most people get it wrong. They're writing 7-paragraph open emails on a first attempt and it's just absolutely awful.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say AI is great because it can scour the web and it can find all this research that might take you 45 minutes. You can do it in 5 minutes and then take that, put it into a proven framework for how to send an email, how to make a cold call, do those touches and do that work yourself. And just have it help you out with some of the more monotonous parts or some of the parts that might take you a really long time.
100%. Yeah, it is making a lot of sales reps a lot faster and more detailed. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. You mentioned one. I'm a Lavender fan. I think that AI tool, again, not sponsored, not paid. I just like the tool and it's free. So recommend that. We got a minute left here. Tell us about Alluvians. What are you doing down there in Austin in November? What's that kooky shit that you're cooking up down there?
Yeah, man. So there's really 2 main things that I do for the business. One is talk about the boot camp and I do team trainings. I've teamed up with two other sales leaders, Clara Johnson, who is a former guest of this show, and Alex Kremer. We do 3-day sales retreats. We help people with the art and craft of sales. We work on the inner game, and we help to build community. So we do a bunch of crazy shit down there. Like we've got a Zen monk coming to speak. We're doing vision sessions. We're doing cold plunges, breath work. We're going to be talking about real sales tactics. We've got Scott Leese coming in to speak. We've got we're talking with a few other heavy hitters coming in, and we have a good time with it. So if anyone's interested, all the links are on my LinkedIn profile. You can hit us up, and happy to chat with you about it.
Love what you guys are doing down there. It is so important to look at sales holistically. It's not just about the tactical stuff. You have to really fold in the mindset, the mental game, the physical game. How does your biology factor into it? Are you sleeping? Are you eating right? Are you mindful? Are you meditating? All of it factors in. So love it. If I didn't have the wife and 3 kids here, I'd be there, man. But I'm a kept man with these kids. They're running me like crazy. That was it. We stole an extra minute. 20 minutes goes by fast when we get a great thought leader like Tom on here. Tom's going to hang around with me for another 10 minutes. If anyone here has any questions, drop them in the chat. We'll go deep on any of the areas that we talked about here, following up with prospecting, using AI, the rituals, the habits, anything that you want to dig into or anything that we didn't cover yet. Drop a text here and drop a comment in the chat. We'll get in there. If you don't get to it, we have a great community on Triple Session. So jump into our Slack community at triplesession.com. We don't get to it, I will run after Tom for the answer. If it's for him, if it's for me, I'll get back to it same day. Tom, TA Sales, how can people find you? How can they get into the boot camp? How can they get your help from TA?
Yeah, easiest way is just, it's all my LinkedIn profile. Got the next boot camp. Next boot camp and the next retreat actually both kick off at the beginning of November. So I'm in the middle of boot camp right now. So look me up on LinkedIn, and I'm always down to talk shop if you want to DM me any of the questions or anything like that too. Very cool. While we're waiting for some questions here, one of the topic was really itching at my brain that I wanted to get into. We ran out of time on the clock. Personal branding for sales, because I see you everywhere. Yeah. And I've been following you since the Millennial podcast and all that content that you were putting out there. Where do you think salespeople and AEs specifically, just the individual contributors, how do you think they should fold in? Do you think they should fold in personal branding and creating content and putting some stuff out there on their own? Yeah, I mean, so it's a heavily debated topic. Let's talk about it in 2 lenses. One is what's going to help you sell more, and then let's talk about like your own. I consider me like Tom Alaimo Inc., Tom Alaimo LLC, right? And I've always thought about it that way. So in terms of helping you sell more, the way to do that, if you want to use your brand, is create content that might be interesting for your prospects. So if you're selling to sales leaders like I have, it's easy because I sell to sales leaders, and it all kind of came in, and that's something I'm passionate about. If I sold to a security person, for example, I wouldn't put out sales content to try to sell to them, right? I might consider doing a webinar series or a podcast or a blog about security topics, have prospects on there. I'll tell you, the biggest deal of my career came from a podcast guest. I closed $1 million deal from someone that started with having the CMO on my podcast when I was selling to marketers. So it does work if you want to put in the effort. It was probably a year from podcast to deal. If you want to I call it career insurance. That's why I think salespeople might want to build their brand just regardless. Layoffs happen, things happen at organizations, right? It's not like news to anyone that can happen. Yeah. I always felt like if I was adding value to people in the marketplace, that if the worst were to happen to me, I might have some people that have my back that I could go to ask for, an interview or who they might know or, some opportunity. And on the flip side, I might get an opportunity that isn't like just a job posting, but someone who knows who I am, that has been following me for a long time, might be able to offer me that opportunity. And, I can kind of skip ahead in line and make it happen. So I don't think I would have been able to build this business without building a brand for, I started my podcast 2016. So, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work, but even just doing some minimal things can help with like career insurance, which I think is really important nowadays.
Yeah, it's okay. And to your point, you're right. I mean, you could blog about sales or you could post about sales on LinkedIn, but if you're not selling to salespeople like Gong does, you got to venture into what your customers care about.
Yeah.
One hack, we used to use this at Rock all the time because we sold to marketers at Rock Content. I would have my salespeople just say, "Hey, can I interview you for our blog? We have a huge blog. It has 250,000 subscribers, gets 2 million hits a month. You get the backlink and you get a little brand exposure. We talk about marketing stuff." That's how we would first open up new deals. And second, salesperson would put a great piece of content. We'd let marketing clean it up and do all the heavy lifting of shaping it and editing it and posting it. And what is a salesperson really doing in discovery anyway? They're interviewing, right? So it was a light way to just start a conversation and use it as some personal branding, put a piece of content out there in their own name and open up pipeline. So for all of you who stayed here to the bonus minutes, there you go. You get a free hack.
Yeah, I love that. We got anyone with questions? We don't bite.
Well, Chris just
I was gonna
something's
ask.
on his mind.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, I mean, are you seeing any particular avenue that has been more successful lately, whether that's, email, calls, video, LinkedIn, or maybe it's something completely different? Or maybe it just depends, but would be curious if, either of you guys are seeing trends on either of those.
Yeah, I mean, it always depends, but phones all day right now. I've seen a lot of even companies with good brands, well known in whatever space they're in, saying their email response rates are down 20 to 50%. Yeah. And there's just an influx of emails. AI is partially responsible for that. Great sales sequence technology is partly responsible for that. People being lazy is partially responsible. Less people are picking up, or fewer people, are picking up the phones, and I think that's showing to me right now. What about you, Matt?
Same for me as far as phones, and for I think the numbers don't lie, but the rationale behind it that I really pulled from it is that people are just drawn to what's easiest. So when you look at SDRs and AEs, when they're doing the heavy lifting and they're weaving in outreach, they lean heavily into email, they lean heavily into LinkedIn, because it's just easier to put together a message and hit send, right? It's harder to pick up the phone. You have to be ready to go. You have to have that skill ready. And it largely sucks, right? It's not an easy job. That's why BDRs jump in and they look to jump out of that job as quickly as possible. But if you can actually get really skilled at it and disciplined and bake it into part of your process daily, then it becomes muscle memory. Then you start to get good at it. Then you start to see some results from it. And there's one little tweak that I've seen folded into this, and it actually worked on me on a couple of sales. The rep would call and then send a text, because they got my cell phone. I mean, Zoom Info, Apollo, they got me, right? And they're calling my cell. So if you can call my cell, you can text my cell too. I'm not picking up a number I don't know. And very few people do. That's the biggest problem with calling. You just don't get picked up. So send a message, hey, this is who I am. This is why I'm calling. I'm going to give you a ring back in 2 minutes. Do the double tap, but in between, just drop a 2-line text. And that's to turn it on. Again, it takes a little effort, a little more finesse, but nobody is doing it. Almost nobody. I've seen it a couple times.
I always go back and forth on texting. I feel like it feels like a little bit of an invasion of privacy to me, but at the same time, to your point, nobody's doing it.
Right?
Yeah.
So fuck it. I mean,
what's the difference?
Only people that it's going to rile up are people you're never going to sell anyway, right? So in the reality, hey, you got to break a few eggs. Yeah,
that's true. That's good.
I like that move.
All right. We're at the bottom of the hour. Tom Alaimo, TA
Thank you, guys.
Sales, 7-figure prospecting boot camp, Alluviance. Is it Alive or Arise? What's the right name for it?
Arise is the retreat put on by Alluviance. Yeah.
All right. Doing a lot of stuff, man. Really cool. It's a great time. Great takeaways here. If anyone missed this in the beginning or you want to come back to it, we're going to post it on our site. Go to Triple Session, look at sprints. It's going to be live for time to come. we'll share with the world. Thanks so much, Tom. This was great.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you.
See you, everyone.